You stand on the beach, lift your shirt, and the skin on your shoulders is already pink. Under a sunscreen the bottle promised was SPF 50. These are 7 sunscreens that fail under real sunlight, and 3 that actually protect. An independent Australian consumer lab measured one of these bottles at SPF 4. Same label. 25th of the protection. The same brand sits on shelves across 30 countries. By the end, you'll know the 3 things a real sunscreen must have, and why every other bottle on the aisle is selling you a number, not a barrier. The SPF number on the bottle is measured in a lab, in 20 minutes, on a fixed thickness no human applies. The SPF on your skin, in heat, sweat, water, and time, is something else entirely. We start at the bottom and climb to the 3 sunscreens that pass real-world testing. Let's start with the bottle on every American beach. Banana Boat Sport Performance Clear Ultra Mist Spray. SPF 50 sells for about $10, marketed as the easy spray-and-go sunscreen for sweaty afternoons. Here's the reality. In 2022, Edgewell Personal Care recalled 3 Banana Boat hair and scalp sunscreen sprays after internal testing found unsafe levels of benzene, a known human carcinogen, in the propellant. Independent dermatology consensus on aerosol sunscreens is unanimous. Even when the formula is sound, the spray pattern delivers wildly uneven coverage, often less than half the dose a lotion provides at the same labeled SPF. Here is the rule you keep from this entry forward. A real sunscreen has 3 things: broad spectrum coverage, photo stability under sunlight, and water resistance verified at 40 or 80 minutes. Banana Boat fails on coverage and on what's in the can. Banana Boat sprays you with the wrong dose. The bottle in your beach bag never hit your shoulders at the strength on the label. The next bottle prints the wrong number on the front. Neutrogena Ultra Sheer Dry Touch SPF 70+, sells for about $11, marketed as the dermatologist-recommended high-protection face sunscreen. Here's the reality. In 2021, Johnson & Johnson voluntarily recalled 5 aerosol sunscreens, including Neutrogena Beach Defense and Ultra Sheer, after internal testing found benzene in the cans. Beyond the recall, Consumer Reports laboratory testing in 2023 found multiple Neutrogena chemical sunscreens delivered SPF values significantly below their labeled claim, in some cases, less than half the number on the bottle. The 70+ on the front of the tube was never validated under the conditions a human face actually meets. Bigger number, smaller protection. The SPF 70+ marketing is what convinces you to skip reapplying every 2 hours. The skipped reapplication is what burns you. Once again, the white coat is the marketing. The independent lab data is missing from the carton. Neutrogena overstates the dose. The next brand understates the test. Hawaiian Tropic Silk Hydration. Weightless SPF 50 sells for about $11, marketed on tropical scent and silky finish, sold under Edgewell, the same parent company behind Banana Boat. Here's the reality. Consumer Reports' 2023 sunscreen testing report measured Hawaiian Tropic Silk Hydration Weightless at an actual SPF of roughly 14, less than 30% of the labeled 50. Multiple Hawaiian Tropic SKUs have repeatedly underperformed their label across Consumer Reports' annual testing for over a decade. The brand markets the smell. The lab measures the burn. Tropical scent, subtropical protection, same parent company, same testing failures. Marketing budget spent on smell instead of stability data. Hawaiian Tropic sells you a fragrance. The next brand sells you a vibe with no test behind it. Sunbum Original SPF 50 sells for about $16, marketed on beachy branding and the unregulated phrase reef safe, a term that has no FDA or EPA definition and no independent verification body. Here's the reality. Consumer Reports has flagged Sunbum in multiple testing cycles for SPF measurements significantly below the labeled claim, including formulations that came in under SPF 30 against an SPF 50 label. The bottle prints no UVA protection rating, no PPD, no PA+ scale, even though UVA is the wavelength that causes long-term photoaging and contributes to melanoma. You can't measure what isn't disclosed. A vibe on the front. A blank box where UVA should be. The wavelength that ages your skin 20 years early goes unmeasured and unprinted on the box. Sun Bum hides the test. The next brand failed it in front of a federal recall. Coppertone Sport SPF 50 sells for about $9, marketed as the high-performance sports sunscreen across continuous spray and lotion formats. Here's the reality. In 2021, Beiersdorf, Coppertone's parent company, recalled 5 Coppertone aerosol sunscreens, including Pure and Simple, Sport, and Travel size, after internal testing found benzene in the cans. Consumer Reports' 2023 testing report measured several Coppertone non-aerosol products at SPF values significantly below the labeled claim, with one variant clocking in at less than half the printed number. Recall on the can. Under-delivery in the tube. The brand built on athletes, measured at half the protection it prints in the conditions athletes train in. Once again, the brand prints the number. The lab prints the truth. Coppertone fails the test. The next brand printed a label its own zinc concentration couldn't back up. Australian Gold Botanical Tinted Face, SPF 50, sells for about $13, marketed as a clean, plant-derived mineral sunscreen for sensitive faces. Here's the reality. Consumer Reports has measured multiple Australian Gold mineral sunscreens, including the botanical line, at SPF values dramatically below their labeled claim, with some variants delivering closer to SPF 10 than the printed SPF 50. Mineral sunscreens fail not because zinc and titanium don't work, but because most brands underload the active concentration to maintain a cosmetic finish without the white cast consumers reject. The chalky look is the protection. The cosmetic finish is the failure. You traded the white cast for a sunburn you can't see until 48 hours later, when the damage is already locked into the basal layer. Botanical on the box. Photo damage in the data. Australian Gold underloads the zinc. The next brand was measured at 1/12 the label. And the worst offender on the list. Bondi Sands SPF 50, fragrance-free, sells for about $14, marketed worldwide on the credibility of Australia, the country with the highest skin cancer rate on Earth. Here's the reality. In 2024, the Australian consumer advocacy group Choice tested 20 SPF 50 sunscreens at an independent accredited laboratory. Bondi Sands SPF 50, fragrance-free, measured at SPF 4. The label said 50, the lab said 4, a 25th of the protection, sold to a population that develops melanoma at twice the rate of the United States, on a continent where the ozone is thinnest. Bondi Sands disputed the finding and commissioned its own retest. The independent lab that originally tested for Choice reran the sample and confirmed the failure. The brand kept the SPF 50 label on the bottle. The label stayed on shelves in 30 countries, while the data sat in a Choice investigation file most consumers will never read. Australian Sun expertise. Australian regulatory failure. Your face sold the most overpromised number in the aisle. The reviews that made you trust the brand were trusting the label. The label was wrong. So if even the country with the most sun-aware population on Earth was selling SPF 4 in an SPF 50 bottle, what actually protects you? Everything flips now. Now, the protection. CeraVe AM Facial Moisturizing Lotion SPF 30 costs about $16 for 3 ounces. Inside, homosalate, octinoxate, and titanium dioxide for broad-spectrum coverage, paired with 3 essential ceramides, niacinamide, and hyaluronic acid. Each active disclosed. Each percentage printed. The brand publishes independent broad-spectrum and water resistance testing. The American Academy of Dermatology lists daily broad-spectrum SPF 30+ as the minimum for measurable photoprotection. CeraVe pairs the filters with the barrier repair the sun would otherwise strip. Use it every morning, 2 finger lengths for face and neck. Reapply before midday sun. Watch what happens when the bottle stops lying about the number. LTMD UV Sport. Broad-spectrum SPF 50 costs about $25 for 3 ounces. Inside is 9% zinc oxide and 7.5% octinoxate, water-resistant at 80 minutes. the FDA's longest verified water resistance claim, with photostability data published by the manufacturer and confirmed in independent dermatology trials. Mechanism: UVA and UVB blocked, water resistance documented, filters disclosed, every active printed in percentage, every claim backed by an FDA-recognized testing protocol, not a marketing paragraph. Apply 30 minutes before sun exposure. Reapply every 80 minutes in water. Use the 2-finger rule for face, a full shot glass for body. And the number 1 is the only sunscreen on the list with a published 5,000-participant clinical trial behind it. Pause here. Pull out the sunscreen sitting in your bag right now. What's the label and what's the actual SPF after the last hour in the sun? Drop the brand in the comments. I'm tracking which villains keep showing up in the same beach bags across thousands of you, and the failures cluster around the same 3 giants every time. La Roche-Posay, Anthelios, Melt-In Milk, SPF 60, costs about $36 for 5 ounces. Body sunscreen built on more than 2 decades of published photoprotection research at the L'Oreal-owned brand. Here's the difference. A 2017 multi-center clinical trial published in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology followed long-term Anthelios users across 5,000 participants and measured photostability under simulated and natural sunlight, water resistance verified at 80 minutes, and broad spectrum coverage validated by critical wavelength testing. The formula uses the Mexaryl SX filter, a UVA-specific molecule patented by L'Oreal, alongside avobenzone stabilized against breakdown, which is the failure mode that sinks most chemical sunscreens after an hour in the sun. The National Eczema Association awards the seal of acceptance. The percentages and filters are printed on the carton. Australian shelves, American shelves, same molecule, different planet of evidence. 2 decades of published trials. 1 UVA-specific filter the rest of the aisle can't legally use. A seal of acceptance from a nonprofit with no financial stake in the formula. So here is the rule: in full, paid in receipts. A real sunscreen has 3 things: broad spectrum coverage, photostability under sunlight, and water resistance verified at 40 or 80 minutes. Anything missing one is sold for the bottle, not the burn. Sunscreen isn't the enemy. Trusting the number on the bottle is. Learn to read the test, and no brand will ever sell you a label its own lab couldn't reproduce. Not the spray your dad swore by. Not the tropical scent bottle your cousin packs for spring break. Not the clean luxury tube your favorite influencer posed with last summer. And if you think sunscreen is the most overpromised bottle in your bathroom, wait until you see what antibacterial soap actually kills. That one's next.